Thank you guys all for being here. Again, my name is Lori Lipsky, and I'm the Social Services Director. And I'm gonna pretend like this is ice cream. Okay, so I submitted my show bar article in the middle of January for the February 2023 issue. Here in this slide, you can see the cover. I don't know, some of you might still have that somewhere in a cabinet or something. And then next, you can see my article where I highlighted some key phrases. This was something that I had been wanting to do for quite a while. Examining your end-of-life plan is important for everyone. Documents and decisions that need to be updated with any major life change, such as marriage, birth, empty nest, death in the family, new job, retirement. So you can see that this has been something that's been on my heart for a long time. I shudder when I think about the content of that article and how it would come into play just a few weeks later. On Sunday, February 12, 2023, our oldest son, Jacob, 23, was out running errands with his wife, Marilyn, following his early morning shift at the Fort Oglethorpe Costco. They were buying dog food and toiletries. Marilyn had to leave for a gym class, so Jacob finished the errands and he headed home. Our family had big plans that day. We would celebrate our beloved dog's 12th birthday, followed later in the evening with Super Bowl 57. I was in the kitchen making cupcakes. At 12:56, Kevin, Marilyn, and I received a text notification on our Apple devices. We had all been listed as emergency contacts on his Apple account. He was exactly 3.2 miles from our house. We encountered the accident site where we learned that he had already been taken by ambulance. I remember the officer saying, "I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, it doesn't look good." We spent the entire day and night at Erlanger, moving from the ER to the family waiting room and then to the trauma ICU, where we saw Jacob for the first time on a ventilator. I was in shock, but I remained hopeful that Jacob would recover and we'd make accommodations in our home for his recuperation. That next morning, February 13th, we learned that Jacob had no brain activity. As we absorbed this news, and because he indicated on his driver's license that he was an organ donor, we were introduced to the Tennessee Donor Services team. My firstborn child would soon give his heart to a 12-year-old girl in Iowa, his right kidney to a female in her 70s in Georgia, his left kidney to a male in his 20s in Nevada, and his liver to a female in her 50s in Georgia. His wishes. While we had no formal written guidance from Jacob, Marilyn was able to piece together his wishes based on their conversations and their 4 short years of marriage. We did our best to give Jacob what he would have wanted, but we were all operating with brain fog, shock, and grief. There were decisions that Jacob made intentionally, but many things we are confident that he had no idea that came into play following his death. Jacob had just become eligible for Costco benefits and submitted his paperwork. His manager shared that the paperwork wasn't even due until after his celebration of life. He was still within 180 days of separating from the Marine Corps, so he was eligible for life insurance with that. He had also signed a contract with the Tennessee National Guard, who's going to be in the reserves, and he never drilled with them, but he received insurance for that. All of these sources provided Marilyn, his wife, with financial help as she began to rebuild her life. None of us anticipated this, obviously, not even Jacob, but he took advantage of opportunities to take care of his family when he was given the choice. We learned many lessons from this, and I want to share them with you. Obviously, death can be unpredictable. I always anticipated growing old and being surrounded by my children. I'll give you a second to read this. I was confident that Jacob would be the one who brought me booze and snacks in the retirement home. Having a written plan would have made things easier for us. While we had no choice, we tried to think like Jacob, which was no small task. It would have been emotionally comforting to know that we were honoring his wishes. What he wanted to wear at his viewing, what songs to play, who to give his sweatshirts to. He was young and he didn't have a lot of the assets that a more established adult would have, but it still would have been ideal to know what he thought, because, and my next point, it's difficult to make important decisions while you're grieving. Brain fog was something else that I was unaware of, the physical pain that I felt during our crisis. The relentless headache, likely a combination of intense grief, constant tears, not eating and drinking. Although Alice's Santa Fe soup, that holds a special place in my heart from that second night in the hospital. Thank you, Alice. I could barely function, though. I regret that I didn't have the clarity to do things to honor him. I'm a planner, and so this was really hard for me because I couldn't think. I was just existing. Hopefully the next hour will allow you to put things in context, your future, and what you want that to look like.
All right, you did amazing. Laura shared that with us, and that's the whole point of this evening. We want to share some responses that we have also gotten over the past few weeks from our grief group here at the Federation that meets on Fridays at noon for anybody. And it doesn't matter how long ago your grief was. It's been an amazing group, excuse me. These are the two questions. What is one thing you're grateful for having in place when your loved one passed? And what are some things you wish you had known before your loved one passed? And here are some of the responses that we've received. Grateful to have the POA in place. Hospice, nurses, I like that one. So you can see some of the things up there, the TV information, the accounts. That's a really common thing we hear a lot. From Judy Saxon, who's here with us right now. She had a lot of great things to say. The positive relationships with the children that helped, supportive friends around her. And I think that what you said, Judy, that really stuck out for us was don't be afraid to attend these grief gatherings or ask for help or seek support. But again, I wish I knew how to work all of the electronic stuff in my house. Common pain. And make sure you leave the house every day for some sort of exercise. That's also a wonderful thing. Some sunshine, some vitamin D, and a little bit of your breathing. Ruth is here with us as well. Grateful for will, power of attorney, advanced directives, but I love this one. Be honest with your feelings and your concerns and communicate. So you see kind of a common theme there. Wish I would have paid for funeral expenses in advance. Yeah. From Gail Sussman. So she gave us lots and lots of information. And this is obviously my father, and so I got to kind of be part of this, and that was part of this process for me as a child, going through this very different as a parent. Make sure you have a plan for your pets. That's something that a lot of people forget about. We see a lot of times there's nothing planned out for anything after that. She was glad she didn't close off his cell phone immediately, because a lot of times, you go to your bank account, and what does it do? Text your phone the code, right? So just the little things like that you may not think about. And emails and passwords, and we're going to talk about all of that as well. So I love this. This was our Alice today, as a matter of fact. Don't wait to buy the flowers, buy them now. So some good advice.
Tonight, if we haven't already, we want to prompt you to think about your family and friends and the instructions you will leave them with. We want to give you information and tools to take action. We want you to put into writing the things that you would like them to know before you go. With that, we're going to begin our panel discussion. We have 4 speakers representing legal, medical, estate planning, and spiritual communities, not necessarily in that order. We'll have an open mic question and answer following our last panel speaker. And we have paper and pens on your table, so if you think of something that you want to ask, just jot it down. And we will get started. Our first panel guest is Nicole Benjamin from Legal Aid. and she's gonna be giving you the perspective from the legal side.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Benton. I'm an attorney with Legal Aid of East Tennessee. I'm in my 12th year of practice. I generally handle more family law cases than I do wills and estate cases, but I just took over our elder law grant in January when Mr. David Nagel retired from our law firm. So it's a little bit new to me, but I'm learning as well, so I'm happy to help you all learn too. A little bit of background too, I'm a graduate from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, go Vols, and my undergraduate degrees are in American Studies and Political Science with a minor in Women's Studies, and then I attended the University of Memphis Law School, graduated there in 2012, and ever since then I've been working in public interest law. So this really is near and dear to my heart, is helping people in the community. So one thing that I as an attorney would recommend that you have in place in any estate plan is 1, a will, 2, a durable power of attorney for your finances, and then 3, an advanced care plan, advanced healthcare directive is kind of what Tennessee calls it. Have one of those in place so that way your loved ones know what your wishes are, your healthcare team knows what your wishes are, because that's really important. Just as Lori was saying, you want to know your family to know what you wanted. So one common question is, do I really need a will? No law in Tennessee here requires you to have a will, but it's very important for you to have one. So yes, you do need one. You need one in case you want to have any say in how or whom those things you have spent your lifetime accumulating are transferred. You want to name a guardian for minor or disabled children, and name who would supervise the funds as the children are raised. So in Tennessee, you can name a guardian in your will, but that is not the absolute person that necessarily will get it, but it's presumptive that that's the person. Well, the judge has to look at the best interest of that child too, but they'll take that into account when they're looking at it of what that parent's wishes were. You also can list in there if you want to donate to a charity or a school or an organization of your choice. You can name the executor of your estate to ensure someone is not appointed by the court, so that way you have somebody there that you trust to handle all of the wishes that you have in there. If you want to minimize the expenses of probating the estate and reduce or eliminate some taxes. You want to provide for the continuation of a business or a family farm, or if you want to greatly reduce the stress and confusion caused when a will does not exist. Because aside from divorces, the will contests are probably up there in the family fighting arena. Part of the advantages of having a will is they provide financial security for your spouse and children. You can transfer assets as you want, rather than how the state or the judge says that they're going to be distributed. You can reduce and prevent income and estate taxes. You can establish who is an executor or a personal representative of that estate. You can provide for your heirs as you wish. If you don't have a will, what happens is you die intestate, and that means that there are certain steps in which people will inherit. So there's a whole fun, convoluted chart that you can look at. I'm not going to go through it because it is pretty convoluted, but the state will determine who gets those assets and things instead of who you name in that will. The contents of a will, and you'll go over this with an attorney of your choice, but you just have to have kind of like standard things like the date that the will is written, stating who wrote the will and that the person is of sound mind, naming an executor, to handle the probating of the estate, specifying if bonding of the executor is required, specifying any inventory of assets required, naming a residual, or having a residuary clause, so that way if there's any remaining assets, who those assets will go to. In Tennessee, there are different types of wills that you can have. You can have, obviously, the written will. Tennessee does recognize handwritten or holographic wills, but you do need to make sure, if you have that done, that you have your signature on there. I did bring an example. So this actually happened recently in my family. My step-grandmother passed away and left her handwritten will. Really pretty fancy handwriting, but if any of you want to take a look at it, I don't mind sharing my family's version of that, but she did her own holographic will, and then proceeded later on to add her own codicil, but it really isn't necessarily a codicil that is legally adequate for changes to her will. So that's something too, if you have any questions about, I can show you just my personal family's items. One other thing about wills is you can't disinherit your spouse. You can, unless there's like a prenuptial agreement or a postnuptial agreement that you've entered into, but that's something that actually came up in my step-grandmother's will. She did not put my grandpa in there, and so we're having to go through that with getting her or his elective share. So if you do try to disinherit your spouse in the will, in Tennessee, if it's 9 years or longer, you can get 40% of the person's like net assets from that, but they were married 46 years, so and there's different tiers for that. But just an FYI, don't try to do that, because then your will's kind of screwed up a little bit. The next type of document that I talked about that you're going to need to have is power of attorney. It's often called a durable power of attorney, and so it just really allows another person to handle your financial matters. These are commonly created when a person's about to like undergo some type of major surgery, or they may have some reason to think they're going to have some limitations in the future. So say you're diagnosed with dementia or early onset Alzheimer's, some sort of disability that will cloud your, I can't even think of the word now. Cognition, yes. I was like, I cannot think right now. There's mine. Mine's gone too. I have 3 kids, my mind's gone. But in the power of attorney, I brought a sample of it as well that we use at Legal Aid. There is a whole list. It's 4 pages, I think, front and back of different powers that you can give to your agent. Those are, you can pretty much handle anything for them. You can sign deeds if you need to. You can go to banks if you need to help with that. Those are some of the powers that you can do with it. Recently we came across a couple who, instead of wanting to execute a durable power of attorney, there's also something called a springing power of attorney. And so with a springing power of attorney, that document doesn't go into effect until you lose some sort of ability or cognition to think for yourself or make decisions for yourself. And so with that, sometimes you can put in there that a doctor has certified that this person is incapable of managing or taking care of their affairs by themselves. The power of attorney, some people don't understand, is that it ends at death. So it's only good until that person passes, and that's when your will becomes important, because then your executor of that estate is able to do the things that you need to do, or wanted them to do, not need to do. One of the issues with the springing powers of attorney that we've run into a little bit, and why I kind of advise against them, is that some banks don't really accept them. Some banks do have their own forms that they use for that, but it's one of those that, I mean, they don't maybe trust that it's necessarily in effect yet. And so that's why I do suggest getting a durable power of attorney over a springing one. The third paper that we usually help people with are the advanced care directives. And so with that, it's a sheet, and there's just a standard form that they have on the Tennessee website, the state of Tennessee's website. And so with it, it just allows for like written directions for your medical care. And so if you're not able to make your own choices. So for instance, I'll give a personal anecdote. My aunt, back in November of 2023, well, she was diagnosed in 2019 with a degenerative disease called myasthenia gravis. And it slowly made her unable to physically function in some ways. And when she was in the hospital, when she finally decided that it was time to kind of give up in a way because her body was just so beaten down, she still had all of her mental capacities. And so even though she had her advanced care directive, she had a power of attorney. She, up until they pulled the life support off and before passing, I mean, she made every single decision for her medical care. So as long as you have your capacity and your capabilities, you are there to make those medical decisions for yourself. Even going through the organ donation process, we sat there, she went and did all of the questions and interviews with the organ donation people. But again, I just use that as an example that you can have this as a backup when that person doesn't have the capacity to be able to tell the doctors and the nurses what they want. Some other things that people kind of go into, but I don't at Legal Aid go into them, but there's trusts and different things that people can enter into that offset some of their taxes and assets and things that, again, I usually deal with more like low income clients, but if there is someone that is in need of a trust that meets our qualifications, we do have a pro bono project group that we can reach out to other law firms to help with that. If not, then we usually make referrals. We'll get 3 different names of attorneys in town that help with these matters and refer people out for that. Some other important information is there are some things that just pass outside of like your will. So if you have life insurance benefits, so that beneficiary is going to be the person who gets that money. If you have a payable on death on your bank account, then that person is able to get that money. We'll go back, I've got a little bit more time, but anybody over the age of 18 who has their full capacity can make a will. And that's really important, as Lori's story, even a young man who just didn't expect what happened. I mean, that's a testament there to go ahead and, even if you're 18 or older, just go ahead and get that started. But at Legal Aid, we do offer free services. Sorry, my stuff's falling. We do offer free services for people that are 60 and older. Right now, we ran out a little bit of our grant funding, and so there's certain income limitations up until July of this year. We had to use a different grant to still help with this type of work. But if that's something that you all have questions about, we're able to give applications if you need them, and you can fill those out. And we can get back to you to see if you do qualify. My paralegal, I had to text her because I don't do intakes. So I didn't know exactly what those income guidelines were, but they are, it's 125% or below the federal poverty guidelines, but we can spend people down based on recurring expenses like a mortgage or car payments. So if you get between 150 to 200% of the federal poverty line based on your income and household size, then we're also able to help for that. But again, after July, it doesn't matter again for the income cap, but just right now we're in that weird budget crisis like a lot of people are with grants and things. But I'm happy to share the papers that I brought with me, including my step-grandmother's holographic will. I have the forms that we can look at if you have any questions over the durable power of attorney powers that they have. And I also have the advanced medical directive that you can look at to just see what kind of questions that you have to answer on there. But again, I'm available for questions anytime. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Nicole. You've given us a wealth of information. Okay. And again, we're gonna have a question and answer time after all of our speakers are done. So if you have any questions that you thought of for her, just write it down on your paper. Okay. Our next, actually this is you. Our second guest panel is Amy Cohen, hospital chaplain, and she's gonna share insight on the spiritual side. Also, I'll just give a side note. I never met Amy in the hospital, but she ministered to our family while we were in the ICU.
So it's an honor not only to have spent time with Lori's family, but also with several of you and your families in time in the hospital. So I'm happy to be here tonight to share some thoughts with you. Some of us faced hard times with well-constructed dwelling places of the soul to fall back on, and maybe we're sustained by family or by friends or community work that we've loved. Maybe we have a strong sense of faith, and maybe not. Others of us find that the tools that have worked for us in the past might be insufficient for these new challenges. And I want to focus tonight on the spiritual side of looking toward the latter part of our lives. Sometimes we need help in building, maybe even from the ground up, a kind of spiritual structure in which we can live with a new reality of physical and mental changes in our lives. We may need to reconfigure our thinking, our theology, in a wider way to invite strength and comfort. The Kabbalists of the Middle Ages called this moving from the Mohin de Katnut, the contracted mind, to Mohin de Gadlut, the expanded mind. Think of this as expanding our understanding of how we can find peace amidst the strains of life. Research over the years in the field of spiritual care has shown that there are several spiritual needs through which we typically travel when considering the end of life. Let's ponder these tonight. The first one may surprise you, and it's the need for beauty. This is not a physical beauty, but rather something that we find in a favorite work of art, special photographs that draw up memories, the exquisite beauty that we might see in the natural world, or the human relationships where we find inspiration and compassion. In every stage of life, we need to be able to hold on to what is beautiful to each of us. Next is to feel a sense of connection, something most of us want throughout our lives, but perhaps more intensely as we realize we're moving closer to its conclusion. Third, we'll consider how to make meaning. I draw inspiration from psychiatrist Viktor Frankl over and over again when I consider how to make meaning in life. His premier memoir, which some of you may have read, is Man's Search for Meaning, and in it he describes what life was like in the Nazi death camps and how he spiritually survived. Frankl states that what motivates people throughout life is our ongoing pursuit not to find pleasure, but rather to pursue meaning and purpose. He maintains that we can discover meaning in three ways, which I illustrated here. One is in creative work or activity that we find purposeful. One is in experiences of love. And the third is the courage that we find we must face when when we face adversity. Frankl is certain that finding meaning and purpose when we must cope with life's challenges will ultimately lead us to joy and fulfillment. The next concept is hope. In Judaism, we believe that we are constantly struggling for the world in which we could live, but is not there yet. Hope is a choice that we opt to believe. And I do not mean false hope here, but rather a hope for maintaining our future, for our family and our friends, for our community and our world. Looking outside ourselves to find hope in the world. Next, we look to the sacred in our lives. Sacred refers to anything that is set apart as holy or different or needing reverence. In most faith traditions, this can include sacred texts or objects important to us, sacred spaces, sacred times, and even practices. In Judaism, the concept of holiness is connected to God's presence and God's relationship with us. Yet the sacred can encompass some other kind of higher power in which a person believes. Or it can find a place within a person who is not faith-based as a believer. Holiness can appear in our cultural traditions, in the people we cherish and the values important to us, such as justice or loving kindness, and through profound personal experiences. Next, I'd like to look at morality, an important part of thinking about the end of life. And I'm going to give you a moment to read these bullets. Near the end of life, morality centers on respecting individual autonomy to make decisions even when we might not agree with them. Morality includes bringing relief from suffering while honoring an individual's preferences and values, such as ethical issues that include managing symptoms of illness and making decisions about treatment. Morality reminds us to provide comfort and to preserve each person's dignity. And finally, we turn to the acceptance of dying. We can open most any classical Jewish book and find evidence that death has always been considered a part of life, a part of God's creation. Judaism, as well as many other religions, invites us to cultivate our mortality as part of a divine plan. Even knowing that we will all die someday, we can find comfort in the brevity of life, as full and rich and finite. Death can serve as a teacher about the fragility of life, about the deep importance of family, friends, of treasured values, and of the goodness of people. It teaches us courage as we move through the valley of its shadow. As a hospital chaplain, I spend time with people from Western and Eastern faith traditions, with people of alternative spiritual beliefs, and with people who claim, often sheepishly to the chaplain, to have no faith at all. Yet all practices are welcome. I engage with people as any one of you is capable with doing with a family member or with a friend. We cannot play God and predict the future. We may disagree with what a person moving toward the end of life wants. Yet we can be a quiet presence. We can try to allow this person to discuss concerns and fears and wishes. We can be good listeners. I'm guessing that some of you here tonight may have come to make our own plans for later in life, but some might also be caring for someone facing illness or aging. And here's some closing thoughts for you. I try to remind myself that when a person is venting, it's an effort to gain clarity when anxiety is high. As a family member or as a friend, we can strive to connect, to stay calm, to perhaps learn to tolerate the discomfort of others. In Judaism, we offer the Misha Berach prayer to those in need of healing. In fact, we continue to offer this prayer when it appears that the healing of the body is no longer possible. Why do we do this? Because many kinds of healing can still unfurl. There can still be healing of relationships, of guilt, of emotional pain or spiritual need. Spiritual healing, which in Hebrew is refuat hanefesh, moves us toward acceptance. Rabbi Harold Kushner, in his landmark book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, states, people who pray for courage, for the strength to bear the unbearable, for the grace to remember what remains instead of what they've lost, very often find this prayer answered. Ultimately, each of us wants to leave a positive legacy in the world. This will give our lives meaning both now and for those who follow us. In Judaism, we are asked to think about our mortality long before we die. So thank you to each of you who fulfilled this mitzvah by joining us tonight. I will close with a poem that I keep at my chaplain desk, which has remained an inspiration to me. This is called The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture, still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.
Thank you very much for that, Amy. And we're going to invite up our next guest, Amy Moyer, who many of you already know as well as part of our community and former social services director, licensed clinical social worker here at the Federation. And me being in charge of any technology is quite scary. I started IVs, so give me one moment. You're not going to take it.
So, thank you all for coming tonight and for the opportunity to talk. And I thought I'm a storyteller. People know that about me. And I'm going to start with the story from 2009. It was the time when both my mother and my grandmother were dying. At the same time, I like to say I was part of the club sandwich generation. I had my grandmother, my parents, and then my own children. And everybody in my family knows this day as the day Amy lost it. Now, most of you who know me know I'm pretty calm. I help people with lots of things. I'm the one that people come to. And this particular day, both my mother and my grandmother were on hospice care, but they both had actually been admitted to the hospital. So I was living at Memorial Hospital between two different floors. My kids always knew when I was going to the hospital because I put on my hospital uniform, which was a peach-colored velour sweatsuit, which they made me burn after. You're just kidding. But as soon as I put it on, they're like, "Oh, who's in the hospital? What are you going to do?" So I'm at the hospital and I'm going between the two floors, back and forth, sleeping at the hospital between my mother and my grandmother's room. The people in the cafeteria at Memorial Hospital know what I eat for breakfast. This annoys me when I walk up and they say, "Oh, are you gonna have your oatmeal today?" I'm like, I've been here too much. There's too much of this going on. How could they possibly know what I eat? So I'm taking care of both of them, running back and forth, still working at the Federation, still trying to do my job, still trying to work with my kids and help them. My oldest daughter was a senior in high school. I was supposed to be taking her to visit colleges. That wasn't happening. And it was like about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And I decided I had to go home and take a shower. I was going to take a break. I was going to give myself the opportunity to take a break. So I go home, drive home. I open the front door to my house, and I hear this, "Mom!" And I hear it again, "Mom!" I'm like, how does she even well, clearly there's none in the powder room. So I go upstairs to the closet where toilet paper usually lives in my house. There's no toilet paper. I go into our girls' bathroom. There's no toilet paper in there. I go in my bathroom. There's no toilet paper. I am at the top of the stairs in my house, and I start screaming at the top of my lungs. What kind of a, and I will tell you I use bad language, what kind of a house do we live in that nobody buys toilet paper if I don't buy toilet paper? You know, I've been going back and forth between my mother and my grandmother, and then I've been taking care of my kids and all this stuff, and nobody bought toilet paper in my house. And I am crying, and I'm screaming, and I throw myself onto the bed in my bedroom, and I slam the door, and I hear our front door open, and I hear it close. I hear a car drive out the driveway. I hear a car come back. The door opens up, and Amanda, my oldest daughter, she knocks on the bedroom door where I'm heaving. I am heaving. I am crying, and I'm the one who holds it all together. I'm the one who takes care of everybody. And I'm heaving on the bed. She opens the door and she said, Mom, Dad and I talked about this on the way to Publix. We do not think this is about toilet paper. And I said, you don't? And she's carrying the biggest thing of Charmin toilet paper that you can buy. And she walks in and she goes, we got you the Charmin. We know that's what you like. And it was the biggest one we could buy. And then she hands me a pint of chocolate chip Haagen-Dazs ice cream with a spoon. And she said, we think you need this. Eat it all yourself. And then she hands it to me and walks out the door. To this day, if you ask anybody in my family, this is called the toilet paper incident of 2009. To this day, I have not bought toilet paper in my house since 2009. And that is honest to goodness the truth. But the thing that we realized, that everybody realized as we were dealing with these emotional things, my grandmother was 96 and she was on hospice care. My mom was 68 and she was on hospice care. She and I were supposed to be caring for my grandmother. My grandmother definitely was not supposed to be the one outliving my mom. And suddenly, and not suddenly, the rest of my life and the world was still going on, and nobody was buying toilet paper. And so what I wanted to talk about today was really how there are incidences when folks die in an instant, quickly. But more often than not, it's people are dying with illnesses, with conditions that are affecting the everyday life of how the people around them are functioning. And so I think it's very important to take the time to know that the folks that are taking care of people, and even after their family members pass away, that feeling of, I don't know how to do my everyday stuff anymore, that sometimes we need to take a moment and ask, what are some things that we can do to circle around those we know in our community who are struggling or suffering? I didn't know that I needed toilet paper. And in fact, shortly after that, my best friend who lived out of town, actually I told her this whole thing, she came to my house and she stocked my house with all the things that she knew that were things I just automatically bought or automatically did, and she knew I hadn't been doing that. And that gift that she gave me by coming and doing that, she even cleaned out my linen closet, that bugs me when things aren't in order. Now, I couldn't tell you if I even had towels in my linen closet at that point in my life, because it was so, it was a day-to-day of caring for people and trying to do everything else. So really taking the time to look at those that maybe taking care of a loved one, or maybe having more than one person in their family. At that time, I told you that my grandmother, my mother, and I think this was the other thing that I wanted to talk about today, was that palliative and hospice care and how important those services can be to many folks. And here I had these two people. My mom died with hospice care the way most people think of hospice care. It was 6 weeks from the point at which she was admitted to hospice to passing away. My grandmother, she on the other hand died by inches. That's what we called it. She was 96 when she passed away, and she was actually in hospice care for 2 years. Because, well, and that's unusual, that's not typical, but what hospice care was for both of them was quality end-of-life care. And interestingly, my mom called me shortly, well, I guess it was probably about 10 weeks before she passed away, and she said, "Amy, I need to talk to you, it's very important." Well, we talked every day, so that seemed a little odd, but okay. So I came over and she said to me, one of the things we talked about today, she said, "Aim, I want to take your dad off of my power of attorney." They'd been married 48 years. They were each other's power of attorney. It wasn't even a question. Well, what do you mean you want to take dad off? She said he's too emotional. Anybody who knows my father knows this is a fact. He is an emotional sort. And she said to me, "He won't do what I want." I said, "What do you mean he won't do what you want?" She said, "I'm telling you, he won't." We had a conversation. We knew what her end-of-life wishes were. We knew what was important to her. Her cancer had come back for the 3rd time. And she was very clear about what quality of life looked like for her. This is another thing that I want everybody in here to think about for themselves. What does quality of life look like for you? And if you are at the end of your life, what kind of treatment, medical treatment, do you want? So we talked to my dad. I said, "Does Dad know you want to take him off of your power of attorney?" And she said, "No, that's what you're here to talk to him about. That's why we birthed a geriatric social worker." So we sat down with my dad and we talked to him about it, and he said, "Well, yeah, you're right. You're right, I am emotional. Okay." So we changed it, we went to the lawyer, we got everything changed, and I'm telling you, even though I do this work every single day, I never once thought that my mom wouldn't still be able to make her own decisions. It didn't occur to me that she wouldn't be able to until the day that she wasn't able to. The cancer went to her brain, and the doctors came to us and said, "We have an option." And the option was to bathe her brain in chemotherapy, put a shunt in her brain and bathe her brain in chemotherapy. She knew my dad, and if he was here today, he would tell you this is true. She knew my dad well enough to know that if given a decision to do something, he would do it. He would say yes. Because they were all in on all the treatment all the time. And she had told me, she did not want that unless it would bring her back to us. So instead of just saying yes, my first question was, what will this do for her? Will it bring her back? Will it allow her to enjoy her family, see who she had gotten to the point where she couldn't walk, she couldn't process, she didn't know who we were? And the doctor said, well, it may give her some more time, it may give her some, I said, I didn't ask that question. The question I asked was, is this going to bring her back? And the doctor said, no. Well, that was the decision was made. We're gonna bring her home with hospice care and circle her with love in her home. Play her favorite music, which is what she wanted. She told us, I want Neil Diamond playing. I want to be read to. I want to hear children's songs. We read her last breath was to the last words of her favorite children's book. She was a kindergarten teacher, first grade teacher. And that was how she chose. She told us. I never had to think about it, not once. And really my dad didn't either. He just would have had a hard time being the one to say it. But she told us what she wanted. She told us what she wanted. So I suggest to you that you should have these conversations with your family members. Now, my family thinks I talk about it too much. Michael DeZick will tell you he knows what I want. Alice Morgan will tell you she knows what I don't want. What prayer I don't want said. I've been to a lot of funerals. I've been with a lot of families and I've been with a lot of folks. But the important thing is that for those you love to know how you want to be cared for at the end of your life is extremely important. It's a gift to them. It was a gift to us that my mom told us how she wanted to be cared for. The same was true with my grandmother. It was just at a whole different end of her life. She had lived 96 years, and she made choices as well. But both of them were able to tell us what they wanted and how they wanted to be cared for and how they wanted to live. And so I suggest that each of you have this conversation so that the people you love know what you want. Even down to where you want to be buried, where you want to be, how you want your service to be. All of those things are things that make a difference at the end of your life. My mom, everybody in her entire family was buried in Shalom Memorial in Chicago. Everybody in her family. There's a plot there for her. There's still a plot there for her. Because as she was dying, she begged me, Michael's laughing because it was him I called. She grabbed me like this and she said, "Don't take me back to Chicago." What? She grew up to her entire family's there. That's where everybody under the tree. I was like, what are you talking about? I hate the cold. Do not take me back to Chicago. In the last week of my mother's death, in the last week of my mother's life, I was freaking out. Where are we going to bury my mom? Because I am not going to let her go back to Chicago. She says it's cold, and I know she hates the cold. She's like, please do not take me back to Chicago. She is not buried at Shalom Memorial. She's buried here. Because that, but that wasn't even a thing we thought of. We thought we had that handled until a week before she passed. So these are my own personal stories, but these are the same kinds of stories that families have everywhere. And if you know what you want, how you want to be cared for, then share that information with them.
Thank you so much, Amy. And now we're gonna have our very own nurse advocate, Jennifer Waxenberg. She is going to share with us, similar to kind of what Amy was talking about. It's a, what do you want to call it? A tool, actually, a tool that is often used in end of life care.
You won't hear me about this. All right, there's really not. You covered it personally. I know, in a good way. No, it's less talking for the nurse is better. It's good. It's good. But
We actually use that document.
okay. So this is something that is near and dear to my heart. So I'm the new community nurse advocate here at the Federation, but my 20 years in the past has been as a hospital nurse at Memorial Hospital, off and on. ICU and ER being the majority of it, and unfortunately those are two places where we do see, and of course Amy knows as well, and Cohen as well, that we do deal with a lot of end-of-life decisions and on the floor. But I think what I learned more than anything as the nurse, because we love our doctors, but who's there 12 hours with the families, the nurse, right? You don't make those decisions in a crisis at the end of life. You make them out. My mother's in the room, and I had a bad car accident in my 20s, and I remember having a conversation with her. If I'm not going to walk, if, just having these kind of conversations then, and of course my cousin Rita took care of me then as well. So that's where I come. This is called 5 Wishes. The Federation has provided this to you today, and we will be passing this out to you later, okay? It's a binder, and you'll be hearing a little bit more about that. But it's the 5 wishes, and you use the word wishes, that you would have for yourself, for your family, and your loved ones. And see, I put a ribbon, just as you said gift. It is a gift. It is a gift not to have to guess what your loved ones would want in their final days. So I will just quickly run through these wishes. Wish 1, the person I want to make the decisions when I can. We've heard from Nicole from the legal side of this. We've talked about the spiritual side. And then again, personally, I don't want dad, right? So that was part of my little Venn diagram here. The right person may be a family member. They may not be a family member. So you may not have a family member close enough where you live to be there and make those decisions. Then you start thinking about your community, your friends, things like that. They know you well, they care about you, and they care about you enough to make your decision that you want, whether that's the decision they want or not. And that's a tough thing to ask of our loved ones. Wish 2, the kind of medical treatment I want or do not want. And when you get this booklet, and you flip through to the wishes, I'm just, so I get the wording right, but this is the toughest one. This is the nurse part, okay? The ventilators, the dialysis, the feeding tubes, the things that you have to decide many times. So not always if it's more sudden. And so you get to define, what do I want? What does life support treatment look like to me? When would I want them to try those things on me, and when would I not? And thinking, just saying this on a Monday night at dinner on a beautiful, it just sounds crazy, right? But it is something that is, at any time, at any point. Your wish 1 designee will be the one that will hopefully help those wishes happen. Now, these are not emergency. We're not talking about an ambulance at your house kind of stuff. This is different than a do not resuscitate. That is looking right now that you have that bracelet or an order in front of the doctor. But an advanced directive like 5 wishes is looking in the future, which is difficult to do. Wish 3, this is my favorite. If you're going to have to think about these things, how comfortable I want to be. So when you think about comfort, pain relief, bathing, things like that, there is a part on your wish 3 in your pamphlet that says, I'm going to cross out the things I don't want. One is my hair done, massage with oils, okay, sure, but maybe you don't want that. So it's just going to spark some ideas of things that might be important to you. Of course, your spiritual needs. I worked at a Catholic hospital. I'm Jewish. My number 1 question was, is there anyone I can call for you, your pastor, your priest, anyone that you would need? Because that was very, very important to so many people. Hospice, of course, as Amy has spoken about as well already. So, wish 4, how I want people to treat me. And again, being in a hospital setting, saying, Mom wouldn't want all these visitors here. There's 20 people parading through every 5 minutes, versus, oh, Mom would really probably like it if people could come spend some time with her in the ICU, but they won't let her, and those kind of things. So you get a chance to just kind to jot down what would be important to you. I want my rabbi to come visit me if possible. I'd like my friends allowed in to visit, not just family. I was thinking when you said this about the music, I kind of have ideas. I'm going to have my Led Zeppelin songs that I want back to. Okay, so, but all jokes aside, it is very specific to things that you think would be important to you. So, other decisions on that, the music, whether or not you like people praying over you or not praying over you. I think one of the most important things, hospital, home. Home is not always an option. Okay, that's not always easy to be unwell or at the end of life and go home. But that's something that if it is important to you, that you let your loved ones know, if it gets to this point, I would rather not be in the hospital. Or, you know what, there's no way you're going to be able to care for me at home, and if you need to do what you need to do. So again, these are just lots to think about, and options that are written out really well in 5 wishes. And lastly, what I want my loved ones to know, and I guess this gets to the point of the decisions like cremation versus burial. There might be some religious beliefs around that, whether or not your religion is, how you look at that, how they look at that. Do you want a large service? Would you rather have no service and have a small celebration with friends and family? What do you want them to remember about you specifically? Or any things you wish that you could have shared with them that you couldn't quite say and that you put in writing? So it's just a time to pause and reflect. And again, at any age. So I think we're different ages in this room, and this is good for any of us at any point. And my final thoughts on this is when you do have this plan, and again, many of you may have already a durable power of attorney for healthcare or a living will. This is legally binding in the state of Tennessee. You get 2 witnesses to sign it, and there's a long list of what they cannot be. They cannot be the beneficiary of your life insurance policy. They cannot be the executor of your will. They cannot be a family member, a blood family member. But share that you have it. Share with your pastor, your rabbi, your friends, loved ones that you do have this. Share where you keep it. It doesn't do any good in the sock drawer, right? So we need to make sure that it's not locked up and that people know where you keep it. And again, if you take this and you already have something, maybe this will spark some ideas that you may want to amend some of the documents that you already have. And be proud that you have given your friends and family the gift to know exactly what you would want during one of life's very toughest times. So, on that note, thank you very much. And so
It's time for questions. So we're just going to open the floor, and I guess I can bring the microphone to you if you have questions. Another microphone? Okay.
Just.
Yeah. Does anybody have a question?
Sam Lowy. Legal question. What are the advantages or disadvantages of setting up your estate as a revocable trust versus a standard will?
What's the question?
I would have to get back to you on that. I'm not very well familiar with trust yet. As I said earlier, I handle a lot of lower income clientele, and so it's not something that's come up yet with my 4 months of practice in this area. But that is something, if you would like, I can give it to Lori. I've been in regular communication with her for things, so I don't mind giving you, I wouldn't say advice, but just what the differences are between them.
So if you write that down, we'll get an answer for you. Okay, any other questions? Okay.
I have a microphone,
Oh, okay.
I'm told quite often. Cremation, we didn't talk at all about cremation. Is there a specific direction, who you would go to for that purpose? A funeral director, or specifically, what direction, how you go about it? Pre-arrangements for cremation.
so that is something that I can say that anytime someone has come to a hospital, we dealt with funeral homes, that is something that usually the funeral home is the person that you would be telling those wishes to, and that they would address that. And you can have that prearranged or not.
You can do that prearranged through the funeral home. One thing that your power of attorney, so the power of attorney dies with you except for the ability to handle the funeral arrangements. And so your power of attorney would be able to handle that for you after you pass. But in here, there are, any funeral director would be able to handle that.
I know for us personally, they just asked if that was something he expressed. I don't know that we had clear, I think my daughter-in-law mentioned that they had conversations about it, so they were able, so that is something they specifically ask you at the funeral home. Did this person, did they express that they wanted this? I think that's something that you can certainly put in the 5 wishes. Just having it in writing somewhere, just in making that known, documenting that. Okay, I saw another hand up.
Did you have a question?
Who had their hand up? I didn't see. Anyone? Okay.
I was holding up my hand to hear you better.
Oh. Okay.
I was gonna ask, what about Lewis? I mean, what procedurally, hey, somebody dies, do I call you the minute they died, do I call you the next morning, do I do something in advance?
They call me.
Ask questions?
The rabbi needs a rabbi.
Well, with this group, probably, but that's okay. So, if somebody is in hospice or death is imminent, it's a good idea to let the rabbi know that it's imminent. That way I can come visit also, talk to the family, and be present with you in those last days. But when it happens suddenly, actually, really first call, you need to go to the funeral home, because the body being taken and prepared and making sure that those arrangements are done. And then rabbi is probably number 2 or 3 on that list, along with all your relatives. And that's because in the tradition, we have to do it fairly quickly. And so to get the turnaround on the events and all of those things, and planning shivas and things like that have to happen pretty fast. So yeah, sooner that you can let somebody know that it's imminent is better, and then within a few hours is good. And I'll answer the call 24/7 if something happens overnight, even on Shabbos.
All right, so at this time,
We have one
oh,
last
another
question.
question, I apologize, yes.
Well, I just thought of it. Every time I go to a doctor or take my life partner to the doctor, they always ask, do you have an advanced care plan? Or formerly called a living will? And yes, we do. We go to so many different doctors. Am I supposed to be bringing a copy of this to everybody?
It is best to bring a copy to everybody, absolutely. And I encourage, especially hospitalization, always bring it, because the problem is if you, I have one at home, when those questions need to be answered, you want to be at the bedside, not saying, okay, now go to that third drawer, not that one, the next one, So I do encourage a copy to be brought. You can have electronic copies as well.
Does the copy need to be notarized, or can you just make a copy?
I think you can make a copy. The fact that you have the original is okay. I mean, you're not going to have 15, well, actually, well, you might. But again, I mean, I'm only speaking for 5 wishes. We don't actually require notary in the state of Tennessee, but you may take copies.
I can answer that.
Oh, yes.
Because I work with a lot of these in the hospital. Do make copies. Once you have your original, a copy is fine. Take them to every doctor.
Yeah.
Just have a big stack, take them to every doctor. If you go into the hospital, take it in the hospital. I put them right in people's records. Then you don't have to worry about it.
So if 3 doctors are at the same hospital, I still have to bring it to each doctor?
The hospital, if the hospital has it in your record, you'll be
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this may sound weird, but I have many friends who are still on Facebook. How do you get rid of the profile? How do you actually, is there some way to
So I've been on
Will you
Facebook
repeat-
since it started.
Nicole, repeat the
Oh,
question.
sorry. She wants to know how you get rid of a Facebook profile for someone that's passed away, I think is what it was. So there, You can name someone as the person to take over your account. So for instance, my sister and I are the ones that had my aunt's account because she didn't have children. And so there's a way that you can designate someone or multiple people to be the controllers of that, and they can take it down themselves, or you can just have it as a memorialization, which is nice, because sometimes people just have all their photos on there and you can still look at them. But yeah, you can go in the settings and designate someone as that.
So to do a quick will, like if somebody just has like, say, house, car, just basics, where would you go?
If you are 60 and older, at least starting in July, I'm sorry that we ran out of money.
660. So I'm assuming you're talking about younger, yeah. I think she means
Oh, if you're
like-
younger?
Like young adult children.
Okay, so we at Legal Aid at least have different grants that we work under. So if they make a certain income, or if they're a victim of domestic violence, we have different grants where we can help people with simple estate planning under those grants. But if they're over income or don't meet the other qualifications for us, then they can go to any law firm here. I think that she works at Chambliss Bonner, so they have their own estate planning department. There are a bunch of other estate planning attorneys that are in town. I see them all the time over in Chancellor Atherton's court. So there's a lot out there, even if you just Google it.
And I don't know if legally this is the right answer, but my children, we did wills online. I mean, they don't have assets, and we did an attorney online, and they have, we are there. We are there support.
Yeah, that's probably.
System, but, so I think if that's, there are options that work that way as well.
And again, one other thing.
Sorry, you're right.
One other thing is, like I said before, holographic wills are recognized in Tennessee. You just want to make sure that that person signs that will. And I can let you, like I said, see my step-grandmothers who passed away. She wrote her own,
When you say
3 or 4
holographic,
page.
you mean handwritten?
Yes, yeah,
So that-
I'm sorry, holographic means a handwritten will. So it needs to be in your handwriting, all of it has to be in your handwriting. You can't have parts of it typed up, but have that and make sure that it's signed.
So I was just thinking back on the question about cremation, and it just reminded me, especially for Jewish people, know what you want within the Jewish tradition or without the Jewish tradition, because I'll ask questions like, what was so-and-so's Hebrew name, and that causes a scramble, or I'll say, do you want us to call the Chaver Kadisha, and a lot of times I don't know, and so we'll default to calling it Chaver Kadisha, but there are people who adamantly say, please not, right? If you want to do cremation and it's not documented, there are religious leaders in this world that will try and dissuade a family from cremating somebody because of the halacha. So if you can make it legally, and also your family is aware that that's what you wish. I've even seen Jewish open caskets, which is usually non-halachic, but if that's what the family wants, then the funeral home will do it. But it's good to make sure that it's clear ahead of time. And so being Jewishly knowledgeable about what a Jewish funeral and burial practices include, so that you can know what you want and what you don't want, and so that there won't be that gray area going on.
And that is the perfect segue. to what
Jennifer,
we have-
one more question to the side.
Sorry.
Rabbi Lewis, could you speak briefly about an ethical will to leave for your children?
I am an expert, thank you.
A lot of people don't know.
I don't know if it's not legally binding, but it's something that oftentimes people will write a value statement of what values they cherish and they find the most important, and that they hope that their children will carry on. That's my understanding of an ethical will, and things that you hope that they will take from you and pass on to their children and their friends.
Thank you. Excellent questions. Is that okay? Well, as you see, Lori is walking around, and this is your take home today. We are presenting you with a tool, a binder for you to utilize that will start the collection of information before you go. We want to emphasize this is not comprehensive. There are things specific to your family that you may need to add. add or things that you need to take out. We also want to let you know there are kits like this. This is our version, us stuffing and.
It's like a middle school science.
It is. We upcycled some old binders that not old, but binders that we had and we utilized. But you can find these on Amazon, books to fill out. We were also told about a wonderful book called Two Envelopes, what you want your loved ones to know when you die. This was at a conference of Federation directors that were here just a few weeks ago. When they heard we were doing this, they were like, wow. Now, first of all, again, it's a tough sell, right? Hey, come join us on a Monday night and talk about this. This is a tough topic, but this book, The Two Envelopes, is something that you might want to read. It's what you want them to know immediately and what you want them to know later down the line. So, the binder that you're getting.
NEA has a members insurance trust, and it's the Survivors Information Guide, and that's National Education Association.
National Education Association. Okay, thank you for that. So there's so many resources out there. You're going to see. Let me just go ahead and get to this. The table of contents, so you can see what we put here under your tabs. Legal papers, birth certificates. Now you might have a safe one, of course these originals are kept, but these are important documents, and I can just say, again, as a child whose parent passed away, and Michael was right there with me as well, trying to find everything. And this is what sparked this for me, the nurse and then the child, just trying to find all the information, the passwords. Do you know how many times a day my own husband calls me and says, what's our password for Netflix? Not the most important thing, but you get my point. Very important to keep a track of and safely kept bills, subscriptions. If you have prepaid for funerals or if you have your plans for that, important people and pets in your life. You may think that your husband or your wife or your significant other or whoever is going to remember your best friend in Ohio and notifying them of something that's happened, but that's important to put on in writing. Okay, some other things that we have in here, you can show. We have a zippered, like a plastic, there it is. Important keys or copies of keys with labels on them. Do you know how many times we went through this trying to unlock things and find the key to things? So labeling and putting those things in there. Something I did forget to mention at the very front, and all of these are in protective sleeves for you, is a basic medical information sheet. So there's one binder per family, but we have extra, you've got different medical information. So we've got extra 5 wishes. Again, the Federation did purchase those and provide those for you. So that's in there.
There's also the religious.
Right. So this was talked about.
Right, so we reached out to the rabbis, and Rabbi Lewis, he did mention a few things that are really important for your religious preferences, and you mentioned the Hebrew name, your Shiva preferences, your meal of consolation, your thoughts on cremation, and your thoughts on organ donation. Those are all personal decisions, and make sure you put them down. There's also on the back, if you're not Jewish, there's a non-Jewish. So, and again, we have copies of all this because that's specific to one person. So, marriage certificate, that's, you can share that. So, if you need extra documents, we have them in the back. Also, do you want to do a sign up, or do you want to think we should wait until July? We usually have legal income every couple months, so do you think July?
Yeah, so our funding was, apparently we used it all, and I'm still shocked that we used it all for our Title III grant, but we have an Access to Justice grant that kind of takes that place for our kind of simple estate planning work. Right now, as I said earlier, there are some financial constraints on this new grant, so you would have to meet those until July when we get the grant back where there are no income requirements.
So what we might do is we might just wait until July, but I would encourage you, if you have the ability, spend the money and just go see a lawyer if you don't want to wait that time, because this isn't something that you can put off, because tomorrow is never guaranteed. With that, I think we're done. I think we've covered as much as our little ways to do.
Again, I know I said it already, but I wanted to thank Lori for her husband Kevin is here as well. And I feel like I've gotten to know Jacob, but it's really put a lot of, you've done this as a gift to other people. So thank you for starting this whole process. A huge thank you to Amy Boulder, Amy Cohen, and to you, of course, Nicole, as well, for being here today. And Alice and Tasha for our food, and Michael, and I know they're not here anymore, and Aaron, yeah, it's again, we want you to see that there is a community here for you. So whether it's a nurse, you've got our social services director, Amy Bowler's always, I mean, you were there with my grandmother, who's had a picture of the Pope next to her bed when she passed away, okay? So, yeah, so you've been there for our family, Amy Cohen as well. We've got lots of resources here, and when you leave, you've got a lot to think about. You probably have a friend that you're thinking, so-and-so can benefit from this information. So share, we will give as many resources out as we can to help.
And if you didn't get a binder, we're gonna make some, we only made 25 because we didn't anticipate, the turnout that we got. So it's a good thing, so please take this, share this, encourage other people to think about these hard conversations. Have a good night, drive safe.